Financial fraud is prevalent nowadays. How are they planning? Do you know? If you don't know, don't worry. We will discuss that in this video. American consumers lost $5.8 billion to various scams in 2021. This was an increase of 70% over losses in 2020. This is part of a larger trend where more people are falling victim to fraud, schemes, and hacks at a time where we all ought to know better. Welcome back to Finance Professor. Consumers were only one of the target audiences for scams. Businesses and even the government have experienced a significant rise in losses due to the dishonest behavior. There are a few explanations for this trend that are worth investing and comprehending because they can help us understand how these scams operate, how to prevent them, and why record high fraud rates may suddenly be beneficial. They will nevertheless have an impact on you, even if you believe that you would never fall for any of these tricks. Financial fraud has had unique surges throughout history, and it doesn't turn out well if you never fall for one of these con games yourself. The FTC received 2.8 million reports of financial fraud in 2021, the most since the organization began keeping track of this information in 2001. This indicates that more attempts are being made than ever before. Fortunately, only 25 of these attempts resulted in actual financial losses, but those who did experience losses did so at the loss of average of $500. What comes to mind when I ask you to picture the typical fraud victim is usually an elderly grandma who foolishly believes everything that she reads online. You would be mistaken though. The most frequent victims of consumer financial scams were actually younger Americans. Grandma generally comes to mind when you think of email scams, and while victims of the age of over 70 are the main targets of these schemes, consumer fraud can take many different forms. The typical employment chance scam victim was under 30 and lost close to $2,000 in total. To gain access to one of the following three things: money, personal information, or free labor, these scams promise a job. The most common job op scam involves a con artist acting as a headhunter or recruiter for a reputable organization and offering a position that sounds fantastic. The only catch is that they demand payment for their services before you can begin working. Real recruiters will never demand payment, and headhunters are compensated by the hiring organization. It sounds simple, but if you're a young worker looking for work and going through numerous rounds of mock interviews before being offered a job that seems wonderful, you might be tempted to take the chance and part with a few $100s just to cover a recruiting fee. Depending on the variation, workers may be required to purchase uniforms, home office setups, or training materials before they can begin working in a blatantly fake position. Another typical employment chance scam involves eager candidates providing the identity theft with their bank account information, identification information, and social security number so that they can use it to obtain loans without the victim's knowledge. Another employment opportunity scam involves people working for weeks without receiving payment. It's a major issue for independent contractors who may work on one project at a time without ever getting paid for it. Without formal contracts in place, it can be exceedingly difficult to prosecute this kind of fraud because it's so difficult to follow. Working from home has greatly accelerated these scams for the apparent reason that these con artists never interact with their victims in person. A job interview that doesn't require showing up to the office in 2019 would have been unusual. Now, of course, it's just business as usual, with the entire hiring process taking place via email and Zoom. Millions of employees are changing professions or failing to find work in a broken job market, and con artists have had plenty of opportunities. Investment fraud, where the average victim lost over $3,000, was the most expensive scam to target consumers. This type of scheme includes any form where the victim is duped into believing that they have a legitimate financial opportunity. From Bernie Madoff's $65 billion Ponzi scheme, which siphoned off funds from some of the wealthiest Americans, all the way down to penny stock scams that prey on naive investors who believe 2,000% returns are feasible. Fraudulent investment schemes come in various shapes and sizes. In the past few years, Bitcoin investment schemes have also been the significant development in the field. If you subscribe to our channel and keep tuned with our content, then you'll be free from all types of financial fraud. Because of how this new industry is, regulations can't keep up with how to define things like NFTs. People are regularly exposed to tales of people who invested early in the proper virtual monkeys and made millions of dollars, but their greed overcame them. By developing multi-million-dollar pump and dump schemes that appear to fail every other week, people are making money off of this greed. Scammers purchase pricey NFTs to use as a display as one tactic to make their scheme seem more authentic. I don't know why, but some people do think that because a man paid $500,000 for a photo of a monkey, he must be legitimate. It's like a sleazy salesman driving a Cadillac, I suppose. These already existing NFTs are purchased by con artists, which raise their prices, increasing media attention, and draws new victims into the cryptocurrency world. You'll probably be okay if you treat this market as a game of chance, but if you prefer traditional casino games, you should be aware of investment fraud and the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act of 1992, also known as Passport, which effectively forbids sports betting in the United States. The legislation was overturned in 2018, which opened the door for states to legalize sports betting. Less than 4 years later, operators began to provide gambling online, and today, Americans spend $92 billion annually at online sports bookmakers. Gambling has its issues, but this enormous market has drawn a new type of con artist who will offer you predictions for the outcome of specific games, all for a charge, of course, just to justify their scams. These con artists frequently wager on both teams in a game and then publish the winning ticket on their Instagram accounts to claim victory. Because the victims will lose both the money they paid the con artist and additional money by speculating on useless advice, this kind of scam can be especially damaging. Just keep in mind that nobody will ever provide you with a system for making money from gambling. The fraudulent receipt of government benefits like salary protection loans become a popular kind of business fraud during the pandemic. Analysts have concluded that up to 15%, or $76 billion, of these loans were fraudulent and are unlikely to be repaid due to lax control of these loans. Fraudulent businesses are also growing in popularity. In the past 10 years, private equity has also grown significantly in size. Even typical enterprises that have been insulated from investment hype are susceptible to more common scams. A common fraud involves a con artist sending emails to business addresses. They will be directed by email to a page that resembles the company platform and ask them to input their login information. This information will be captured by the bogus page, which will then send it to a con artist so that they can track their email activity. The con artist will then search for those in charge of paying the bills and handling payroll. Once they've identified a target, they'll simply replace the bank details on a copy of an invoice that a business had previously paid to a legitimate supplier. Most firm accountants won't cross-reference the bank information on previous invoices, and even if they do, the con artist can just send a second email claiming to have updated their information. This is not limited to small businesses with subpar payment procedures. Financial fraud reports are at an all-time high, which indicates that more people are reporting it. Public knowledge of the problem is excellent, and more reports mean more opportunities for law enforcement to apprehend these offenders. In areas where it was previously challenging for organizations like the FDCC or CEC to follow, we are also beginning to see individuals suffer sanctions for engaging in fraudulent activities. Fraud is a natural aspect of the free market, and whenever a new trend emerges that makes individuals wealthy, con artists will be waiting on the sidelines to prey on those eager to profit quickly. So what do you think about it? Do let us know in the comment section below. Please hit the subscribe, like, and bell icons. Refer to other amazing videos too. Goodbye.